Good evening, everyone. Yes, thank you. It's great to see you. Thank you so much for coming out. I'm Sarah Lomax-Reese. I'm the president and CEO of WURD Radio. We are so excited about tonight's event in celebration of Black Music Month. And it is so fitting that we are hosting it here at the historic Clef Club of Philadelphia. So we are very grateful. I want to really thank the staff and the leadership of the Clef Club, Lovett Hines and Don Gardner, for hosting us tonight. I think it's going to be an amazing conversation, and we thought of doing, we're always trying to figure out what kind of conversations can we have that will advance the dialogue or be a little bit different. And because we are in such a complex, difficult moment right now in history, we thought that for Black Music Month, it would be really fitting to look at the music of the movement. And every movement, every era has had its protest music, its message music. And as you saw in the video montage that Steph Renee so beautifully put together, every era, going back to, when we were enslaved and all the way up through today, we have been able to articulate our sorrows, our joys, our struggles through music. And so today's conversation is really about what is that arc? What is the context? What is the information that we can glean from our art and culture through music? So I'm really excited about the panel. Now, I wrote my notes so that I wouldn't forget anything. I'm at that point in life where I got to write stuff down. I really want to thank our sponsors, Universal Companies. Eve Lewis is here representing, so thank you, Universal, for always supporting us. From the very first time that we did a Word Speaks event, Universal has been with us. Pico is one of our sponsors, and Comcast NBC 10, Telemundo, and the Pennsylvania Lottery. So a big thanks to all of our sponsors. Are there any WURD members in the house? Yes. So a special thanks and shout out to our WURD members. We would not have been able to grow into the FM dial, our 96.1 dial position. We would not be able to do a lot of the things that we do without the support of the community through our membership campaign. So if you're not a member, maybe consider becoming a member tonight. We'd really appreciate it. And we have a special perk. If you become a member tonight, you can enter to win some tickets to see Frankie Beverly. So nice little perk there. Let's see here. We've got DJ Mizzy, who's going to be on the Wheels of Steel. I guess it's not the Wheels of Steel anymore, but that's the era I come from, the Wheels of Steel. We have an amazing panel. We have James Peterson, Dr. James Peterson, Professor Fredara Hadley, Ursula Rucker, and Arson. So they're going to come out in just a second. We're going to, just in terms of the structure of the event, we're going to have the panel, and then we're going to have some Q&A with the audience. And then afterwards, we have a little after party. We have food and music, and there's a cash bar back there. And actually, the bar is open now. So you can go back there and get a drink and settle in. And so this is like dinner theater. It's like, a bar theater, rather. So please feel free to hang out after the panel discussion. We have some hashtags. I'm not going to say pound. We have hashtags, Rhythm of Resistance, hashtag OnWord, and hashtag Word Speaks. So if you are a social media person, which we all should be at this point, please communicate. Okay, obviously my son doesn't know I have an event. He's calling me. But feel free to chime in on the conversation through social media. So the last thing I'm going to say, and it's probably the most important thing that I want to say before I turn it over to Steph Renee, is this speaker series is named for my father, Walter P. Lomax Jr., MD. He is the founder of WURD. He was a physician who practiced in South Philly for 32 years, not far from here at 18th and Wharton. He was an amazing man. a physician, a philanthropist, an entrepreneur, just awesome. And he was a huge, huge, huge lover of music and a supporter of the arts. And so he indoctrinated in us. I'm one of 6 children, and he would pack us up, he and my mom, and we would go see the Temptations or, Stevie Wonder or the Edwin Hawkins singers, and they invested, because it was not cheap to say, even back in the 70s and 80s, it wasn't cheap to take 6 kids and, to see anything. So anyway, he loved music. He would go see Sweet Honey in the Rock, which not a whole lot of brothers would go see, but he was up in there and he loved it. So he is here. He is enjoying this moment, and he is supporting what we're doing in this room and all that we're doing. So I just want to really kind of thank my father, because I know that his spirit is in the house. So the rhythm of resistance, protest music, past and present, is what we're about to experience. So I'm going to turn it over to Steph Renee, host of The Mojo, and an amazing artist, musician, and just all-around talent, video editor, and everything. So thank you all so much for coming. I look forward to talking to you after the event as we mix and mingle.
Do it like this. I was going to say, I'm not in my light and my mic. Okay. We'll shift. Good evening, everybody. It is so good to see this many of you here tonight for our conversation. And I'm glad that you heeded the call. This is, for those of you who don't listen to the program regularly, who don't come on the station regularly, are not necessarily part of our WURD family just yet, we hope that tonight's conversation will help you get there, and that you'll appreciate that this program was designed to be a multi-generational dialogue about the songs that say messages that matter to us in our various stages of existence. Now, we also issued a warning before you came in tonight that some of the selections, some of the clips that we may play for you tonight may have some language that's a little adult. And we did that consciously because we know that there are some people, because of your moral values, who take issue with it, who may never hear it. We want to give you some of this music in the context of the conversation. Because if we can't at least set aside just a little bit of our hesitation about hearing it, then we'll never be able to scholarly have a dialogue around what this music means to the people who listen to it day in and day out. And if our ultimate objective is to find some balance between the overwhelming negativity that many of us feel is coming at us from commercial music radio to what we would like people to listen to in terms of positive messages and music, and get to know the entire spectrum of it, then we're losing out on a big part of what we can use to bond each other. We clear? We good? Now you see, I wore my t-shirt for you all that has a word that some people are a little uncomfortable with, because I wanted that to be in keeping with the spirit of this. For those of you who can't see it, it says Uppity Negro, 1865. I come from a long line of folks who proudly called themselves uppity Negroes or uppity colored folk. And so we're gonna conjure up some of that as we celebrate those artists who push the boundaries of what mainstream America may not want to hear at all, and what we as a community need to hear to talk about our struggle, our experiences, and ultimately our victories. And so with that, Troy, if you wouldn't mind cueing our video that gives you just a little taste of the 4 esteemed panelists that we have assembled for our conversation tonight. And panelists, you may come take your seats as we give the audience a little taste of who you are.
But in this particular moment, we're at a strange impasse where some of this success and some of this great exceptional narratives that we see around presidents and Supreme Court justices and gold medalists and news anchors tends to obscure our capacity to understand that racism is still a problem and that Black pain and suffering still exist. I started to come to these ideas this moment where people on MSNBC and other networks that I was appearing on were asking me to think about this concept they were referring to as post-racialism in America. A lot of folk felt that the election of Barack Obama meant that this nation had reached a certain benchmark. And that benchmark, for some people, was that we had made enough progress in the areas of race and racial discourse and race relations. So I'm watching this video, a music video, with Rihanna and Kanye West and Jay-Z. And Jay-Z starts to sort of narrate this all black everything sort of ethos. And for Jay, that ethos is very, very materialistic, right? It's about the American Express black card. It's about luxury black cars. It's about black shoes, all these material items, all these things that I think for Jay-Z as an artist reflect his extraordinary success.
Dr. James Braxton Peterson.
Until you walk, run, bite a mile in her shoes, don't you dare stand in front of me and tell me what a woman must do. She must swing from chandeliers for undeserving spouses and paramours who deny her suffrage by day but crave and praise her womanly wiles by night. Good enough to fuck but not good enough to vote. She must go from the beauty of Africa to the horrors of Massa, go from titties dangling bare and shameless to being branded licentious, temptress, embarrassed, go from land of yams and heat hot to land of cash crops and seller's block, go from God names to no name, to his names, now black, now inhuman, freedom stolen, family stolen, now beholden, but still golden, field hollering, and ain't I a woman, and ain't I a woman?
Ursula Rucker.
But now that I'm wide awake, I hit the stage on autopilot. At the top and wasn't invited. I dropped the streets ignited. They rewind it when they buy it, but they don't know what's behind it, cause all they see is jewelry.
Arson.
Mary Hadley, the daughter of Fred and Clara Hadley. I am a visiting assistant professor in musicology at Oberlin College, and I'm the founder of Juicy, where we just try to do dope shit. But we give walking tours in New York based around African American music. We teach classes through Juicy U, and we have a dope radio show called Juicy Radio. What it really is just a study of people making music, why a certain person or group of people make the music that they make or listen to the music that they listen to. Or so the premise of that is that whatever music I may create or you may create is connected somehow to our worldview and who we are in the world culturally, geographically, maybe spiritually.
Fredera Hadley. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is our panel. And as you can tell, I'm so glad, first of all four of you said yes. Because we want to give perspective on this music thing from the folks that teach it, from the folks who study it and pass it along to a new generation of students, and from the folks who create it and go out in this world and perpetuate it in ways that are meaningful and that our audience may not be privy to before this moment. So our conversation, ladies and gentlemen, at least the one that I'll engage, is around putting some brackets of understanding around this whole idea of the music industry and our love for the soundtrack of our lives. And then we'll turn over some conversation to you all to ask questions that can hopefully deepen your understanding of what we begin here on stage, and that you'll be able to take back into your spaces and continue the conversation. That's our ultimate goal for tonight. So I want to begin with the panel, and anyone can chime in on this, with kind of where I inadvertently started on Channel 10 earlier today in describing what this conversation was going to be about. Because I said it's difficult for us within the context of protest music to delve into that without an understanding of protest overall. Because I think some people may limit their idea of protest to just large gatherings and marches. But within the context of some of the music that I know we'll discuss today, it isn't necessarily everybody's fight, and it isn't necessarily something that happens publicly. This protest may be about a very different perspective. So, maybe we'll start with our professors and talk about how do you engage in the subject of the music industry and messaging with your students.
Yeah. So for me, I'm not an expert on the industry, and so I tend to have a fairly generic critique of the industry in terms of what it's done to the music that I study. What it's done to hip-hop culture has been very sort of particular, and it's made certain forms of messaging very formulaic, and it's tended to market what I call the tip of the iceberg of hip-hop culture. So a lot of folks will agree that hip-hop music is misogynistic and materialistic and violent, and I will concede that point, but I would also argue that that's just the tip of the iceberg, that beneath the surface of that is arson, right? Beneath the surface of that is Ursula Rucker, right? There's all these incredible artists making substantive music. If you ever hear a rap song that to you raises an issue that's objectionable, like the mistreatment of women or foul language or materialism, I guarantee you there's at least 10 other rap songs that critique that specific thing. Now, market forces in the industry are not going to elevate that to the level where that music will be played on platforms where it will be circulated in the same ways. But I feel like we have to be really proactive listeners. Part of this, the reason why this kind of event is important is because one of the ways in which you can protest the music industry is to be extremely proactive and progressive in how you select to spend and consume, how you spend your time with music and consume music. And so, the music industry is like most American capitalist, globalized industries. Mm-hmm. It siphons off content that they feel is marketable and makes that formulaic, so they reproduce. That's why you get a lot of the same rappers talking about the same stuff. But the great part about the democratization of the production of the music, and I'm so excited because Ursula's working on a new record right now. She was just talking about that. But the democratization of the production of music means that we have options and we can be proactive about what we choose. And I think that's one way to resist the capitalistic sort of machinations of the music industry.
Fredera, ethnomusicology. You gave us a brief description in the video, but I think for the benefit of everyone in the audience, can you take us there? And especially at Oberlin, I think for those of us who are familiar, we might have a very pristine, Europeanized idea of what curriculum or what atmosphere might be about at Oberlin. And so for your presence to be there and how you teach and what you teach is incredibly important.
Good evening, everyone. I'm Southern. I like it when people speak back. Thank you. Good evening. Whenever I tell people about ethnomusicology, I always say, like I had to say to my parents when I said I was going to graduate school to study it, I didn't make it up. It's a field that's existed for over 60 years. And really, I tell people the thing that I love more even than music itself is really understanding how music connects to people, the relationship between the two entities, why music is so powerful, why it is so powerful that it compelled all of us to come together in this room just to talk about it, right? And so those are the things that drove my crazy rationale in some ways to go to graduate school and pursue a doctoral degree in this. But so that's what that is. And so at Oberlin, and I've said this in other settings before, Oberlin, I teach in the conservatory. Oberlin has the oldest continuously open conservatory in the country. The conservatory was founded in 1870, I think. And Oberlin as an institution, which was founded in 1833, was the first institution in the United States to regularly admit both women and African Americans. It was founded by abolitionists, and so it has this really storied and progressive past, and it's pushing towards a progressive future in the hiring of a black woman as its new president, so we are very excited about that. But going back to the music, particularly if you look at the history of African American classical music, almost all of your late 19th century going into 20th century composers graduated from one of either two places, an HBCU or Oberlin Conservatory, right? And so there's this long history that Oberlin has of being directly involved in, and these are the people who did a lot of our arrangements of our Negro spirituals. Moses Hogan, Nathaniel Dett, people like that. Just arrangements that are still performed by concert choirs at Howard, Morehouse, the world over, Fisk Jubilee singers today, right? And then they have this jazz studies program, which was founded by an African American, a composer by the name of Wendell Logan. And and this is important, as we get more and more into the institutionalization of jazz, right? We're here at the legendary Clef Club, and jazz increasingly is put beyond the reaches of black people and black community. And so in the institutionalization of jazz at Oberlin, he made a very radical decision that you may or may not be surprised to know, in most jazz studies programs in the country, there aren't African American music courses taught in those programs. A lot of those programs want to downplay the role of African American people and sort of culture in informing the musical practice, but Wendell Logan made the decision that there would be an African American music class taught, and more than that, it would be 2 semesters, so it's a year-long course. And it's a required course for every single jazz student that matriculates through that program. And so Oberlin brought me there to teach that. And I'm grateful that my boss, when he hired me, said, who is white, and he said, I teach mostly white students, white male jazz musicians. And he said, I need them to know that they can't have Coltrane without having slavery. They got to wrestle with the totality of it. And that was all I needed to hear. I was like, oh, I can do this job. So I've been very fortunate, and this is not always the case with professors, and Dr. Peterson can certainly attest to this, that you get the latitude to create courses based on what you think students need to know and address what's going on in the world at any moment in time. And so in the fall, I'll be teaching another new course called Black Music in the Hour of Chaos, which will be a contemporary look taken from the Public Enemy record, and looking at how these things operate in the contemporary moment.
I need to feel free. Because what I also need to emphasize, as both of our professors have responded, is a conversation that Dr. Peterson and I had a while ago when he was trying to convince me to go back to school for my own PhD. This idea of what black youth in academia need to do, and now are empowering institutions to be able to engage in a different way with students than the traditional way. And I want to just give a quick shout out to Dr. John Jackson, who is the Dean of the School of Social Policy and Practice at Penn, who just a year ago graduated his first PhD student who did not write a dissertation in order to be able to have their PhD bestowed. They did a film dissertation. So as we engage this conversation about black music, you also have to know that academia is evolving to be able to encompass much more of what Dr. Peterson and Dr. Hadley bring to the table in terms of being able to groom the next generation of both musicians and cultural scholars. It's really important for us to understand that there is a definite dialogue and evolution happening within those halls. But within halls like this, performance halls, is where our other two panelists have begun and developed and have gone out into the world. And so for both of you, I would love for you to describe the challenge of moving from what we commonly understand, at least in hip hop parlance, as the underground, to being able to be, I don't know whether we would say more mainstream, but just more recognized and more financially supported in trying to release the kind of work that you want to release into the world and the challenges involved in that.
Well, for me, I really didn't experience too much challenges. For me, it was more about becoming more professional in my approach with my music, putting it on platforms so people could purchase it, like iTunes, CD Baby, making sure that my brand overall was more presentable and diverse, understanding that, yeah, I'm representing the hip hop culture, I'm representing, quote unquote, the streets, but also want to represent people who, I want to be able to speak to people who didn't have a chance to live the lifestyle I did. So for me, crossing over into mainstream, for me, I was really diverse. I understood different mindsets. Even if I didn't live those experiences myself, I understood the perceptions of people. I understood the reality of other people. So I know how to articulate what's going on from my point of view so that person can get it. I actually, I'm educated as well, so I also know how to use different vocabulary and, like I said, to articulate my lyrics to a point where someone can understand me, but at the same time, the hip hop community can understand me. Making legitimate songs, everything down to the production, the quality of the production, the quality of the videos, image is everything, presentation is everything. The same thing in the corporate world when you go to an interview and you got to wear a suit and tie, and people judge you on your appearance. So for me, it was just making sure that I had to sit and think about, what do I want my brand to represent? If somebody hears a song of mine, even if it's not a song of my choice, is there still something in that song that's going to represent what I stand for? So for me, it was staying true to myself first, but just understanding how to brand it in a way that universally people can accept it and enjoy it on a sonic level.
Hello, everyone. So, yeah, I'm thrilled to be up here with everyone. I think I kind of sort of remember the question that you asked, so I'll probably go off on a long tangent. So pardon me. Is John Barber here, actually? Okay. Well, I was just going to say, I don't know what mainstream and underground really is at this point. I'm renegotiating everything at this point in terms of brands and labels, but I definitely know I operate beneath the radar a lot of times, which I'm fine with. I don't like getting the beneath the radar money though. So, it's kind of like trying to balance out having been in this game for so long and still plugging away, because it's pretty much all, I know how to do a lot of things. So within my art form, which is poetry, I do everything I could possibly do in that arena, okay? So it's kind of hard to talk about. It's kind of hard to quantify, because while you're doing it, you're just doing it. You're giving it. You're making it. You're being authentic with it, and you just kind of go with the flow. And I just always want to keep rising higher and higher for myself, whatever that means, to teach, to do workshops, to do lectures, to rock stages, to put my poetry in a painting, have it be part of a mural on a wall, or teach children, produce shows, anything I could possibly do to keep doing what I love, what I have been put on the path to do, and to also try to eke a living out of it, because I was talking to Dr. Peterson, you know, we were like, well, what are you doing? I'm like, well, anything I can do so I don't have to go get nobody's job, you know what I'm saying? Because I wouldn't be okay in a job right now. I'm like a wild wolf in the woods right now. You're like, I've been doing this for like 17 years, only doing my art, living from my art. People ask me how I do it. I'm like,
Hey.
grace of God, you know, and lots of hard work and diligence. But yeah, you know, I believe in what I do. You know, I believe in art. I believe in the power of art, and I believe in the power of bringing the art to the people and having the people realize this is a way that we can have a voice. This is a way that we can tell our stories. This is a way that you can search for the truth, be about the truth, stand up for the truth, and tell the truth.
That's good.
Thank you for that. DJ Mizzy, you with us? Okay. So we want to incorporate DJ Mizzy, who's hanging out back here. So those of you who are this far on the side probably can't see him, but he is within our realm. We're going to lean on some of DJ Mizzy's catalog and some of the songs that were represented by videos that you saw as you were coming in and getting settled, to begin to talk a little bit more about this idea of the rhythm of resistance. And so I would love, and this is a shout out to Chris Norris, who's in the audience with us, if you could give us a little taste of Marvin Gaye, What's Going On, Mizzy? That's one of those songs, ladies and gentlemen, that if we didn't talk about a publishing or release date, and we didn't sit still like we are right now to listen to it, because once we know it, we start singing along, right? Sometimes we don't let those lyrics get back in us just by sitting and taking it in. And so, you know, I mentioned Chris Norris because he came on my program and we talked about the debate that rages between Marvin Gaye and this album, and this song, of course, in particular, being one of those linchpins that is lauded throughout you know, kind of the musical world as being sort of that moment when Motown got a conscience, that moment when a lot of people realized the power that this music could have to really impact people in contemporary society. And there's a little bit of debate about that. Mm-hmm. So I offer that to everyone on our panel to ask, we kind of collectively recognize that song as a rhythm of resistance, but for you, in your development, in your young life, let me know about maybe one of, not necessarily the first, but one of the first songs where the lyrics, the message grabbed you and made you think about the power of what music could do for a people, for a generation, in the way that What's Going On impacted so many folks. Don't everybody speak at once.
I
Yeah, go ahead.
Well, I want to just say that I can hear it like in my house when I was growing up, and my brothers used to play it, and I actually got to meet this amazing man and sit on a panel. Well, it was a WURD Speaks panel. It was oh my God. See how everything comes together, you know? When I was little, and my brothers used to play their music loud in the crib, they used to play this song called Walk the Way of the New World. And it was, look, I can't even recollect what his, birth name was, but Hakeem Mahabuti, who I idolize, who I worship, who I just respect, who I love, who when I sat on the panel with him that year, with Mama Sonia Sanchez, with Baba Amiri Baraka, with Raz Baraka, okay, and little old me, just being so amazed that I was able to be in that company. And first of all, he bought every one of my CDs, okay? He's like, look, I'm about this, for real. Oh, you have work? Oh, I want to support it, But anyway, this song was like amazing. So it was basically a poem. Mm-hmm. And he was speaking the poem over some amazing music. So it was this epic, 9-minute, song. And it was the drums and and I was like, oh my God, what is this, And I just remember this line, and I saw Jesus, on 125th Street, sitting in a pink Cadillac with a dashiki. I was like, what? Oh my God.
Right.
Yes. I don't know why I want this, but this is what I want. So, yeah.
Others?
For me, I heard this song growing up. My mom used to play a lot of music. My mom's here today. If it wasn't for her, I probably wouldn't be doing music. Can y'all give her a hand? So I remember hearing Marvin Gaye. I remember hearing that song, and I used to dance to it, and I just really didn't know what the lyrics meant at the time. I was 5. I just thought he meant what's going on, what's up. But as I got older, I started to listen to the lyrics, and it was actually redone by a couple rap artists, Nelly, Alicia Keys, and they redid the video, and that's when I really paid attention, and I was like, wow, it really talking about some serious things going on globally. Mm-hmm. And then as I got older, a song that stood out for me, it was a song by Tupac. I lost my father at the age of 6, so I really didn't have any positive males in my life, but the people out in the streets, but it was really no positive people. So I never met Tupac, of course, but in my headphones, that was like my big brother. So the song Changes really stood out for me. The first 6 lines it connected with me so much. The first 6 lines, he said, I wake up in the morning and I ask myself, is life worth living? Should I blast myself? I'm tired of being poor, and even worse, I'm black. My stomach hurts, so I'm looking for a purse to snatch. The cops give a damn about a Negro. Pull the trigger, kill a nigga, he's a hero. Get a crack to the kids, who the hell cares? One less hungry mouth on the welfare. At the time, that's what I was witnessing, as an 11, 12-year-old. So that really stood out for me. And nobody was talking about that as far as that blunt, as far as the older music go at the time, it was the music my mom was listening to was all positive about love. It had a couple protest songs, but it wasn't that blunt. It was wow, he really just said it. So for me, it was we can say that? We can do that? Oh, so I got some things to say, and I'm going to write a rap, and I'm going to go say some things that's on my mind about how I feel. And people started to relate to it. So that's how that happened.
Yeah. Professors?
Yeah. This is a hard question for me because there's so many songs and so many artists have shaped who I am and have inspired me to do the kind of things that I try to do. But I think the first song that came to mind was the Message in '82, because I'm about 10 or 11 years old. And, hip hop is changing my world view. It's changing how I see the world and giving me this sense of validation that I just didn't understand from other forms of music. From my older brothers were listening to funk or what my parents were listening to. I didn't get their connection to it. He has the message?
No, yeah, I didn't want to cut you off. I was like, we could bring it in, but is it all right?
Yeah, so I'm from Newark, New Jersey. And so the message, yeah, give it up for Newark. But, broken glass everywhere
Yeah.
is a description of the neighborhoods that I grew up in and was walking around and trying to live through. And just the idea, the sort of Darwinistic idea of coming up in inner city America, like that really captured my life, right? Like, just survival of the fittest and like, it's a jungle out there, and just that metaphor was so compelling to me at a young
DJ
age.
Mizzy is going to give, for those of you who have no idea what he's talking about or haven't heard it in a while, we got it.
I say that line over and over in my head all the time.
Yeah.
It's like a jungle sometimes.
Yeah. Close to the edge, I'm trying not to lose my head. It's like a jungle sometimes. It makes me wonder how I keep from going under. Yeah.
Man.
Right.
For those of you who remember the days of allowances, I just got to say that wasn't what was around me, but I got allowances, and I had a record store that we used to go. It must have been like a country mile. It had to literally be like a mile and a half from my house, but we would walk. We'd go get our candy, and we would go spend our allowances on vinyl in the record store that was at the mall at the top of the hill from where I lived for things like that. The Sugar Hill label, big blue, light blue jacket.
Big blue, baby blue. That's
And you
right.
waited until there was a new one so that you could go add it to the collection. For Dara.
I think I have the most cliche answer ever, but it's my answer. So there's that. I was born in the late 70s, and my answer is fight the power, because
That
I
ain't
was
cliche.
about
That's not cliche.
right, but it's like everybody. But I distinctly remember I was about 10 years old, and so I think it's really interesting that that's the
That's
age
the time.
around
It is.
which we
It
start
is.
kind of.
It's when you start listening to your own music. It's when you
Right.
start trying to find your own.
Right, I grew up in West Palm Beach, Florida, down south. Oh, somebody's heard me. And I have nice, wonderful, respectable, professional parents who secretly were raising like this really militant kid, right? And then I just remember Fight the Power, the video, because I was too young to go to the movies to see Do the Right Thing, but I could watch Video Soul and stuff like that. And it was so black. It was just so black, like literally red, black, and green, black. And they had, the S1Ws, like this military thing, and the Terminator X, and they had all these posters of all these black people who I hadn't quite learned the names of yet, but it was like all these black people in the street, and Chuck D has such a masterful delivery, and so even if I couldn't fully appreciate yet the gravitas of what he was saying, I got it. I was like, why am I not in the street with these people that look like me? And I really think it was this seminal moment for me where I was just like, wait a minute, something really, and I want to highlight something that Arson said I think is really important. These are all, the songs that we're talking about are amazing because of how they address the moment, but they're also incredible songs and pieces of music. And so the production value of these songs still resonates with us today. And so a lot of times it is about those other things too, like saying what you have to say, but delivering the message in the best way possible. Like the production on Fight the Power, and I teach this in my class, it has about 25 samples in it.
Yeah.
Right? The Bomb Squad did an exquisite job of creating a sonic tapestry that matched Flavor Flav and Chuck D's delivery. And that's part of the reason why when I play this in class today, to a bunch of white kids from the suburbs, they're still like, what? And blown away because it stands the test of time.
A little clip of it.
Yeah. Another summer.
Sound of the fucking drummer. That's so.
Brothers and sisters. What I'm giving, know what I'm knowing. Our black man's with it. Gotta give him what you want. Gotta give him what you need.
I was going to say shout out to everybody who listens to WURD regularly, because you know that attorney Michael Cord, Michael X, uses that as his entrance music. So you get to hear it every Sunday. But you know, bringing us into that space of appreciating this idea of how most of the music, I think, that we would characterize as rhythms of resistance challenge us in some way and inspire us as well. For me, I think it is a combination of things, because, you know, piggybacking off of what Ursula brought, and you all know my crates are deep, and I came from a musical family. So it was in elementary school hearing a recording of Nikki Giovanni's Ego Trippin'.
Yes.
That was one of the first pieces where I was like, what?
Yes.
Like, you know, I mean, and this is, and to me, it was before hip hop really took root as an art force and everything. But to be able to stand up there, and I'm so bad, even my errors are correct. What?
Yes.
I mean, you know, that impacted little Stephanie in a big way. And skip forward several years after I decided to be a poet myself, it was laying down in the backseat of a car with Lamar Red Cross and Trapita Mason on our way to a poetry reading in Atlantic City. And they had, Lamar had some mixed cassette that he had put together, and Nina Simone's Four Women came on. And now, as much as I love my parents, as much as I feel they gave me an incredible cultural landscape, I don't ever remember hearing Nina Simone's music, sadly, until the Assassin movie came out. Point of No Return, I think it was called.
Point of No Return, yeah.
And this young white assassin girl listened to Nina Simone to get fired up whenever she wanted to go out and kill people. That was part of the plot of the film.
It's a pretty good movie, actually.
It is. It's a great film. It's just, you know, the things that make you mad when you go, how is it that this piece of pop culture is what gave me a real door opening to the power of Nina Simone's music? And that particular song, in those depictions of these women, and how often we don't talk about the struggle and the glory of living in this form and being that, impacted me greatly. And I think that these rhythms of resistance take on all different kinds of shapes and colors based on who we are and what artists are bold enough to put into the music. And so I want to come back to you, Ursula, because you are one of the few people that I know who didn't just experience Nina Simone as a recording artist. In one of the final sort of performances of her life, you were on that bill. And I need people to understand this. There's a reason why we assembled this panel. Nina Simone is yet another name that comes up very often when we talk about protest music, when we talk about this idea of rhythms of resistance. As a poet, as a Philadelphian, talk a little bit about that kind of, I guess, when you think about legends, what that means within the context of what you do, and her specifically.
Yeah, thank you. First of all, what Stephanie was referring to, that was my first performance with a musician, like doing my own thing. And I performed with my now guitarist for 17 years, Tim Matzer. It was the first time that we did a duet, and I opened up for Nina Simone at the Tower Theater. And, but Nina, Queen Nina was, Queen Nina. And they didn't really want her to know that she had an opening act, because, it was all about Queen Nina, this is my show. But they thought the ticket was too expensive, so they wanted to put, add some more. I was so scared. I was like, I don't know what I'm doing. But it was, such a, I gave us the nickname the Concubines, because nobody knew, us. We were like, the Cy Johns. So, Nina Simone was like, wow, I have a, What Would Jesus Do? I have a whole bunch of other ones like that. Like, what would Frida do, Frida Kahlo? What would Nina do? What would Miles do? what would Prince do? You know, these are things that, like, really, I employ them. It helps me in my moments of not wanting to or thinking that I don't want to do this anymore because it's just too difficult or it feels too difficult to keep, you know, waking up every morning and have to just live, you know, on a planet that doesn't love you, and more importantly, in a country that really doesn't love you, and see all of the signs of that, and know that you're not crazy, but you feel crazy because you're like, no, this can't be happening, but it actually is, you know, and trying to raise 4 sons in a place like this, and be an artist who talks about the fact that this stuff is happening and having to come up against people not really wanting to hear it or be bothered with it or think you're weird or look at you side-eye, you know, and just keep doing it and just be like, what would Nina do? Well, probably drop a well-placed F-bomb somewhere, which I love to do, but I won't do it right now. And just be brave and glorious and you know, keep moving forward. So yeah, Nina Simone is one of my top inspirations and motivators.
Indeed. A little Nina. Can we talk a little bit more about Sister Nina?
Can I make a note about that? The musical. What's so interesting, and when I teach this song too, about this song in particular, is that she has this incredibly aggressive message that she's delivering. Yes. But musicologically, it's a show tune, yes. Right? It's in a major key. It's jaunty. It might be some type of chase scene in a movie, and so the way in which she is almost operating the role of trickster, yes. And deceiving the ear, right? And so if you're trying to deliver a message as strident as that over a tune that is as happy-go-lucky as that, it has to have a title as forceful as Mississippi Goddamn to really kind of jar one's sensibilities. And I think the fact that she's toying with people's musical sensibilities in such a way just adds to the brilliance. And if you ever, there's one video of her performing this, and I think she's in Europe, and it's an all-white audience, and she's playing and she's singing, and she's looking dead in the eyes of everybody as she plays it. And the look on her face is one of defiance and consternation, even as she's playing this really happy-go-lucky tune.
Right. In one version of this song that I have in my collection, she says, "This is a show tune for a show that hasn't been written yet."
Yep, exactly.
And you know, the whole idea of the fact that this song, as much as we can study it, isn't going to get airplay because of regulations around the phrase goddamn. Mm-hmm. And so I say that with also the disclaimer that tonight isn't being broadcast live, so we can have a little bit of frank conversation and play some of these clips. I just want to remind folks of that, that in this context. And I wonder, and I toss this back to the panel, in that mentality, right? We saw through the late 80s, well, mid to late 80s into the early 90s, this whole censorship movement as it related to hip hop in particular around this idea of Tipper Gore, C. Dolores Tucker, and I know that's a sensitive thing for you Philadelphians. I'm just saying this is frank conversation. I'm one of the people who stands in the mindset of I want to use every single word available to me. I don't want you banning stuff. I don't want you telling me I can't say it. And that, unfortunately, limits some of the music that I can share with you all during a course of the program, because I don't like censored anything. But the notion of the vile, perverse things that happen to us on a regular basis, and yet we had such a buy-in in some ways from our own community about we shouldn't use this language, we shouldn't necessarily speak about these things in songs because it's not appropriate. And I wonder how, as artists and as people who teach the music and interact with students, how you approach that in your own individual ways.
I'm anti-censorship, and I'm a parent as well, so I understand why people could get on the Reverend Calvin Butts bandwagon or the C. Dolores Tucker bandwagon. I can understand, or the Tipper Gore bandwagon. I can understand that. So a couple of things. One, if you look at some of the songs that have served as a flashpoint for these debates, it's ridiculous. Two Live Crew's Me So Horny is what pushed it almost to the level of Supreme Court.
And that's the music I grew up on, because I'm from South Florida.
Deep South.
And I turned out okay.
But it's also music. But Two Live Crew is not the sort of paragon of like the aesthetics of hip hop culture, right? But what we find over that history is that when we do try to censor, censorship always has this lag. Right, and so for example, they wanted to take certain words off of radio. They wanted rappers to stop using the B word, right? But the song that really ends up getting censored for that is Queen Latifah's UNITY. Right. It's not all the songs before that, right? Or they wanted to take the N word out, right? They try to get this movement to get the N word out of the music. But what they didn't censor Niggas for Life by NWA. They ended up censoring Nas's record.
Yeah.
Right, the Untitled record, which I think is now called Nas, but initially it was an Untitled record. And if you listen to what he's talking about and trying to think through in terms of the concept of the N-word, he's being pretty historic and pretty incisive in that debate. And so censorship is too reactionary for me. It doesn't serve the purpose of really challenging artists, and it doesn't change the terrain of what we have to do as educators. I don't want to tell my kids, turn that off. Even though there's some stuff they watch and consume, I want them to turn the hell off. What I want to do is give them the tools to discern and interpret and be literate in all the different things that they're going to be consuming. So you can tell your kids stop playing video games and turn off the hip hop music. That doesn't even make sense in the world we live in, because they have access to it from every screen, everything. It's on their hip. We need to be invested in giving young people the tools, the literacy tools, the critical media literacy tools to look at a text, whether that's a film, a video game, a rap song, or a website, and have skills to interpret and engage those things critically on their own. And if we're not doing that, censorship is just too reactionary, it never works. It always ends up censoring the people who are trying to do something constructive, as opposed to the folks who are being salacious.
I want to give you a little taste of Queen Latifah's UNITY, so you have an understanding of how this was controversial 25 years ago.
Sure was. There it is.
See, this is the response to all the dudes being misogynistic, and this is what ends up getting censored.
So again, this song was in response to two very distinct scenarios that we see unfortunately play out far too often, particularly among our teenagers. One, trying to hang out and be cute and do what you do and have people put their hands on you. And then the minute you react negatively to that, then you become the bitch. That's the response. You first you were the cute girl that they were trying to get to know. And the second one is about domestic violence, dating violence, and saying, I'm not that for you. And so, when we put the blanket kibosh on certain words and certain ideas, we might miss the larger message that an artist like Queen Latifah was trying to give us.
Can I say something?
Yes.
As an artist who is known as being like somewhat of the Millie Jackson of poetry.
It's a great time.
Which I used to sneak into one of my brother's rooms and listen to Millie Jackson. Maybe it affected me, I don't know. Used to just stare at the album covers too, like, wow, she's saying cool. But, it's something that I have to come up against all the time. I always get, I can't, most of my stuff, so much of my stuff you can't play on the radio. Or when somebody invites me to come speak for kids, they think they have to preface it with, well, this is for children. I'm like, I'm 49, right? I'm a professional, right? I know what I'm doing, right? I know when to, tone it down. But it's definitely very difficult to be me, to be free, to love all language, to love the truth, and to try and tell the truth with my love of language and with our not so pretty history in this country. So you want me to talk nice to you about the ugly shit that happens here? Oh, you want me to make you feel comfortable about the most uncomfortable shit that happens here?
Preach.
It's not my job.
Nope.
I don't get paid enough for that. So I might as well tell the truth, and even though it's hard, to keep doing it, I can't not do it. You know what I'm saying? But it's definitely annoying, to make a whole album, a whole body of work, something from your heart that you want to give to the people and then have it, oh, we can't, oh, it's this, but so many people will actively pay their money, way too much money, to go see a Hollywood blockbuster that is riddled with violence and all kinds of language that says nothing, that means nothing, that has no message in it, and love it. And so I'm confused.
Arson, I know when you were on the radio with me yesterday, we talked about the fact that you consciously don't curse in your songs. And so, that feeds into this conversation as well.
Exactly. I mean, for me, I understand why people curse, but for me, it's an artistic challenge personally. I know, for me, cussing is something you do mindlessly, in my opinion. For me, you say fuck or you say shit. But for me to consciously be creative and create lyrics, I wanted to challenge myself to get the same impact of a cuss word by articulating and matching up and harmonizing lyrics to a point where I can get the same and evoke the same emotion in people, but do it in a clever, artistic way. That's my way of approaching. People listen to my music. I mean, I had fans that bought albums of mine, and it took them 2 albums to say, Dad, I just realized you don't cuss. And the reason why is because traditionally, artists who don't cuss are looked at as cheesy. I got a lot of respect for Will Smith. I like his music. But sometimes in the streets, people ain't feeling Will Smith. And there's a lot of people like to compare me like, oh, you don't cuss, you like Will Smith. And it's like, no, I'm not. I mean, I'm me. You know what I mean? I just don't curse because I have a specific, unique style and flavor where cussing don't even come to your mind because I already get my point across. And that was always a challenge for me. When I write lyrics, I had times where cuss words perfectly rhyme with what I wanted to say. And I was like, dang, that is perfect. But I said, no, that's, I wanted to challenge myself to come up with something else that could, to make it that way. So, but at the same time, I do understand and to some extent respect other artists who do curse and give it to you blunt, because that's a reality. You know, like one of my favorite songs that I thought was just crazy that they even allowed that to come out was "Fuck the Police" by NWA. You know, like "Fuck the Police" was like, and I understood where it come from. I mean, even myself, I had situations where cops came up to me and harassed me for no reason. You know what I mean? And we come from a generation where our parents were Black Panthers and, you know, the civil rights movement. But a lot of the times in the 80s, the parents was on drugs and they wasn't there to always educate you and tell you the positive way to handle things. So you just took the route you knew. And at that point, it was just, you know, not for me, you know, I was angry too, but for a lot of my friends, that was their attitude. You know, it was fuck them, you know what I mean? Because they're here to protect and serve, but they treating us worse than the gang down the block is. Yeah, so yeah.
Bear with us, ladies and gentlemen. I want you, especially for those of you who wouldn't otherwise hear it, I want you to hear a piece of this NWA song.
Major.
Yeah, right.
Those of you who came with us to see the screening of Straight Outta Compton saw a lot of the context for what created this song. But I gotta tell you, those people who heard that not guilty verdict for the officer that killed Philando Castile, this song all of a sudden becomes that much more real once again. And this is 91?
No, 88, 89.
So again, so 88. So we're talking about this. This song is almost 30 years old.
Sure.
Mm-hmm.
And how much we're still seeing these scenes play out on our streets today. So again, we're context. We're giving you brackets. Fredera, I want to give you a chance to.
Oh, just ditto. I'm anti censorship too. One, because I don't think it works.
It doesn't.
It just doesn't work. Like, if you say they can't do it on the radio, fine. People do it on mixtapes. They do it elsewhere. It pops up someplace else. And so what I really think people are talking about in terms of censorship, they're talking about access and who gets to be able to hear this. And I still don't think that works, because they're usually trying to keep children or young people from hearing it, and it's the job of teenagers to find things they ain't supposed to be listening to.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like, as I mentioned earlier, like I grew up on 2 Live Crew making the most like booty-centric, bass-heavy, like no lyrical content music, and it terrified my parents because I loved it. That and NWA, and seriously. And but that was my job. I was a teenager. I wanted to hear all, and as well as staying up late to watch Def Comedy Jam stuff I wasn't supposed to be paying attention to. Like, that's going to happen. And I think you're absolutely right in that then it becomes a job of society, of parents, of families to help young people work through all of this material. What does this song mean? Why is NWA, a group with a controversial name in and of itself, niggas with attitude, making a song called Fuck the Police? That it forces us to have to reckon with that in ways in which we may have to admit that we're not prepared to do. But, you know, we as the adults in the room have the responsibility to find the tools to help work through these complicated truths. And so I think, you know, it should all exist. It should all have a place. And also, usually when you have like such strong language, it's because people are really mad. And black people are not supposed to voice their anger. Women are not supposed to voice their anger in such vile and perverse ways. And so I think that it serves a very important purpose in allowing people to be assertively angry. And as Ursula was speaking, not deliver that message in a comfortable way. You know, let you know I'm mad as hell, and you ain't gonna be able to get around that message if you were listening to this song.
We want to give people in the audience a chance to ask questions, so I want to kind of bring this back around, but I'm glad that you voiced that there is a gender gap in what we find acceptable in many times, and why artists like a Nicki Minaj or a Lil' Kim or other people who have pushed the boundaries of respectability in that way are such controversial figures in our society. And Ursula, I want to come specifically to you with this, and everybody else can fill in as we prepare to take questions from the audience. Of course, the first recorded piece of yours that I became familiar with is The Unlocking, that you shared on the Roots album, Do You Want More?
Yes.
And it's about gang rape. And, you know, before we even get into the question of whether language is available, speaking into that kind of reality for so many people in the age of Don't Boo, Cosby, and other situations that we have seen in our society, R. Kelly, where young women, drugged or not drugged, have been placed in situations where consent is not even considered. And the idea that you tackled that in a poem, and that you were given a vehicle to share that with this, you know, group from Philly that was challenging how we thought of hip hop with live instrumentation, I think should be applauded and has to be recognized as one of these linchpin moments in this context of resistance for what it gave to people who were listening.
Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah, no doubt.
Well, and thanks to Amir Questlove for, you know, scaring the hell out of me and asking me to do it, you know, because, I mean, yeah, I don't know if I ever would have made my foray into, well, that was the first thing I ever wrote that totally squashed all self-censorship for me for the rest of my whole entire life. So I will be always grateful to him for giving me the invitation to be free. And also to challenge me to tell a story of, you know, and I guess you could frame it anyway, but it happened to have that frame, you know, to tell a story of a woman who was objectified and assaulted sexually and comes out the victor, which I thought was ridiculous for him to ask me to do. But it was definitely a challenge, you know, for me to figure out how to do it without ever, thankfully, having experienced anything like that myself. So I kind of had to relate it to something that I did experience, which I did do, and so it worked. But then I did have some women come to me after it was released, and they heard it and asked me a question like, hey, you know, coming to me saying, I was raped, so when I listen to this, you know, I just need to know what you're saying. And I was grateful for those moments because, well, those moments are the moments that magic can happen in, when you create a forum for discussion, for exchange, and someone actually comes up and asks you a question, and then you can share what your vision, what your approach was, and then they can find out that you didn't do it haphazardly, without care, without intention. And so yeah, it taught me a lot, you know. I mean, I can't, just listening to you talk about it kind of blew my mind, because you know, when you're inside of a thing, you can't, yeah, well, my friend always says you can't see your own eyebrows, you know, except for in the mirror. And that's kind of how it is, like you just do it. But it definitely changed my whole entire life, and yeah.
It changed mine too, and I've already said this to Ursula, so I have no problem saying this again. You know, I grew up in inner city around really masculinist culture, you know. I went to college and joined a fraternity, like around and hung out with a lot of football players, always around a lot of masculinist discourses. And always, if you were just honest, if men are honest, you always hear men talking about these kinds of scenarios from a very different perspective. You hear men talking about these kinds of scenarios without thinking or even conceptualizing the issue of consent. And that had been my socialization up until the point where I hear the unlocking on Do You Want More? And when you hear, it was a stunning moment. It's literally the first time someone my age who grew up in hip hop, who grew up around a lot of men, a lot of like masculinist testosterone culture, it's the first time you hear a woman speaking back to those situations. It's the first time that you will interpret those situations as rape. First time you'll interpret it as sexual assault, because you've been socialized. This is not to excuse or exonerate anyone. It's to show you how deep hypermasculinist culture is in the black community, that those scenarios are so often reported as consensual scenarios, so often reported as the degradation of women and the sort of promiscuousness of women. This is the first time in my life I heard a woman speak back to that and dismantle my whole sense of that scenario, completely deconstructed in that one poem. Powerful, powerful moment on a hip hop record.
Oh, thank you.
Yes.
And so, both Arson and Fredera, I wonder if in this moment, as we hear some of the things that historically have impacted us, and we look at the more things change, the more they stay the same. And in the black community, far too often they stay the same. Are there other selections now that put you in that mind frame of maybe required listening, for our audience to extend the dialogue through generations, other thoughts about how we really start to think about the power that this music can have to inspire what we all need to do to make those changes?
That's a great question. There are two pieces of music, two pieces of art contemporary pieces of music that I think are really important. And that I would recommend that everyone check out. One is Common, the rapper Common, put out an album called Black America Again, but as a part of that, he has a song called Black America Again and a 21-minute video that is just stunningly beautiful and powerful to watch. I don't think that we talk about it enough. I think the executive producer was Ava DuVernay. It was directed by Bradford Young, who is a black cinematographer who shoots black people on film stunningly beautifully, a protege of Arthur Jaffa, who worked on Daughters of the Dust with Julie Dash, and Bradford, who's about my age, like late 30s and whatnot, so he's a young old person somewhere in there, but he was nominated for an Academy Award, yes. So highly acclaimed, and it features, and what that video does, and it gives me goosebumps every time I watch it, and most people don't even know that it exists. They filmed it in Baltimore, and it starts out with a friend of mine, Rashida Bunbury, who's a brilliant choreographer and curator, singing a ring shout at the spot at which Freddie Gray, where there's a shrine set up to Freddie Gray in Baltimore. And it goes through all of these genres of black music, both historical genres, jazz, boogie woogie, soul. They use a little P-Funk sample in there. And you have a djembe. I mean, it's stunningly beautiful and very cohesive how they tell this story of both truth and of hope, which can be really difficult to do. So it's on YouTube. I suggest that you watch the video. The song is on, whatever service you use to get your music, but watch the video. And the second one is because I also think, and understandably, we talk a lot about hip hop, we talk a lot about soul, but this trend of rhythms of resistance exists in all of our genres of black music. It exists in jazz. You can talk about pieces like Alabama by John Coltrane or We Insist, Freedom Now Sweet. But you can also talk a lot about what artists like Christian Scott, Samora Pender Hughes, young jazz artists are doing today. So there's that whole body of work where Ambrose, the Commissary, a whole generation of jazz musicians in their 30s and in their 20s who are taking the same stance with music. But the second piece is by a woman composer named Courtney Bryan, a piece she composed last year, maybe year before, called Sanctum. And it's this orchestral work in which she brings in the recorded sounds of protesters in Ferguson in the composition and uses lots of music motifs and inspired by improvisatory preaching of folks like Shirley Caesar, C.L. Franklin, to directly challenge, and this is her response to police brutality, and it was performed at Lincoln Center. And she said, and she talks, and Courtney, again, in her early 30s, graduated from Oberlin Conservatory, did her doctorate in music at Columbia, highly acclaimed and degreed and all those things. But she said that she understood the spaces into which she would find herself. And she wanted, in her own way, to bring disruption to those places, as if to say to the people who patronize Lincoln Center, you aren't safe anywhere, just like we aren't safe anywhere. You're going to hear this message anywhere where we are. And so I think it's important to me to widen my lens and make sure I'm looking at all those places where we don't necessarily think rhythms of resistance might pop up as well. And that piece is online as well.
Arson?
For me, I would say the only contemporary music as far as hip hop that I see going on is pretty much from Kendrick Lamar. Not too much of his current album, but his last album. He had a song called King Kunta, and it was a real aggressive song talking about, you know, coming up as a young black male. It didn't really get much attention on radio. It didn't really get rotation like that. It was just so raw. But I see what he did. He waited until he did get the popularity and the platform to address such issues. So King Kunta was a real strong song. But it's pretty much the only song that's out on a mainstream level that I pretty much know of. I mean, other than that, it's a song I did, For the Camera.
Yes.
I want y'all to see that. Go to YouTube, watch For the Camera. That's a video where you'll see me like handcuffed and bleeding, and I'm kind of like in a Black Panther type attire. And in that video, I have caskets in it. I have a whole bunch of army of kids in it. I have about 500 people I did a march with. We had helicopters and tanks, because we really wanted to talk about the killing of young black kids and the stories and the pain that go with it, and the frustration between what's going on with authorities killing people and people killing cops. And we addressed everything, but we did play a little sonic trip like that Nina Simone record. Like, if you listen to it, it sounds fun. It's turned up. The kids is having fun. But it's one of those things I purposely did. I wanted to sonically intrigue you, have you all bouncing and jumping. But if you listen to the lyrics, it's really, really direct. So the song is called For the Camera. It was directed by myself, and I edited the video. Everything down to the editing, the audio, the scenes that I show was all was on purpose. So when you get a chance, check that out. But King Kunta is the only song I know that really directly hits it.
A little taste of King Kunta, Kendrick Lamar. For those of you who aren't keeping up with contemporary hip hop, I want to add 2 footnotes to Kendrick Lamar, just as a part of our conversation. One, when President Obama was asked about his favorite songs last year, another song from this album, To Pimp a Butterfly, How Much Does a Dollar Cost, was one of President Obama's named favorite songs of the year. So, amazing. It's just an amazing. He's an amazing artist. You need to know him, especially if you want to have meaningful conversation with younger people. Also, in keeping with that, his latest album, titled Damn, every single song from that album is in the Billboard Top 100. Never happened, never. 14 tracks, I think it is. All 14 are in the Billboard Top 100. Now, you all know how commercial music radio works, even if you don't listen to it long. It's no way all 14 of those songs are in hot rotation. It means that the kids are downloading that much and streaming it that much, where those sound scans are being noticed for the entire album. You need to know it if you want to talk to your kids about what's happening in the music industry now. You need to hear it. James, Ursula, any other thoughts
I mean,
about
I'm still listening to
required
Damn
listening?
right now. I mean, I love Arson's work, but I respectfully disagree with him a little bit. I think Damn is a great record as well. And I think it's political as well. I think it just requires a little bit deeper. You know, To Pimp a Butterfly is very ostensibly making interventions around Black history and around political issues. I think Damn is a little bit more subtle, but it has a very sort of deep Christian underpinning to it. And so I think you gotta kind of know your biblical references and stuff like that to see kind of where he's going with it. But, you know, I think Chance the Rapper is also making incredible music. Again, it's for folks who are not into having Christianity in their music, they might not like it as much because Chance is someone who's like saved and he's really wrestling with his substance abuse and different things like that. But he is also absolutely independent.
Yes.
So he doesn't like have any kind of major label backing. But I mean, I know Beyonce gets a lot of hype, but I still really love that Solange record. I mean, I know it's like blasphemy to say this, but I think that Solange record to me is like better than any other Beyonce record. You know, like it's the one she released this year.
A seat at the table.
Yeah, Seat at the Table. A Seat at the Table to me is like, and I don't even like R&B. You know this, right? I don't like R&B, but I like that record a lot. And I'm actually trying to find more music that's like that, music that appeals specifically to women in certain issues. So I've been listening to the SZA record recently, which is also a really good record. You know, I have a 16-year-old daughter, so I'm trying to like negotiate that world. And SZA is giving me like tools to be able to SZA is an artist who's performed a lot on K-Dot's records and Isaiah on the TDE.
She's his label mate.
She's his label mate, and has a lot of beef with the label around some gender politics of the label. But she released her record called Control, like the keyboard button Control.
Yes.
Just a couple weeks ago. And I think that's great stuff to listen to.
I think this is a little taste of Solange.
It's a great record.
This song is called Mad. Also featured on this particular song is Lil Wayne. And so, again, parents, grandparents, there's always been conversation. One of my favorite India Ari songs has a verse that's dedicated very specifically to Lil Wayne. Now, India and me and Arson and Lil Wayne are all Libras. And so this concept of balance is a big deal. But in this song, people, if you have not seen the Katie Couric interview of Lil Wayne, please look it up.
Miss Kate.
Because you can't, first, it's Katie Couric, right? One of the whitest women ever to be in mainstream media. And she did a whole half hour, I think it was, sitting down with Lil Wayne, trying to basically get in his head and understand who he was. And at the time I was working as a teaching artist, I did not understand the fascination with Lil Wayne with my young lady students. And I got it when I saw the interview. Conflicted? Hell yes. He's got issues. But understanding it, and this song, so Solange asked him very specifically, there's a big New Orleans focus on A Seat at the Table, but she asked him to respond in that song, and sometimes, you know, he's a little mealy mouth, so sometimes it's hard to understand what he's saying. But the idea that he could be mad, that part of the psychosis that he deals with, the challenges that he deals with regularly, is because he's mad about so many things that have happened or haven't happened in his life. And so he acts out. All of us can relate to that. And so just to, as a point of understanding, please look up the Katie Couric interview of Lil Wayne, and that song is Solange's, Beyonce's little sister, from her very, very popular Grammy-nominated album, A Seat at the Table.
Grammy winning.
Oh,
Yeah.
won, that's right,
She
yes.
won at least one, yeah.
See, there you go. Urs?
I mean, because I have 4 sons, you know, and I am subjected to the foulest shit you've ever heard in your whole entire life. In the car, when I'm desperate, I need a ride somewhere because I don't have a car. My 18-year-old is the only one that has a vehicle. And I'm like, oh, soul, can you give me a ride? And then we get in the car, and I'm like, oh.
Lil Yachty.
My spirit is broken on the whole car ride, you know? So I have to find like some point of balance. And he honestly always asks me questions like, well, I mean, Mom, you cuss. I'm like, it's not just about the cussing. It's about what you're saying, okay? Like you were saying they need tools. I always say they also, with the tools, they also need some options. Different options, and they need to know how to balance that all out. But anyway, with that said, you know, for me, and me as an artist, and me always wondering, how can we keep doing this? Not really our importance, because I think I'm important. Shit, I don't need you to tell me. But we all as artists are always like, how can we keep doing this? Or even just teachers or artists, as generations change, how can we still keep communicating? And so, yeah, I just want to echo, like, for me, Kendrick Lamar is a savior of sorts. For me, he brings out what I need when I receive art, when I listen to music, when I listen to words, when I need a message, when I just need a banging beat, it's all there for me. And with my sons, it gives me something to have some kind of platform to, okay, it's like one of the only places we all agree, you know, like I can, hey Mom, did you hear the new Kendrick Lamar thing? You know, so we all can, but I get excited about the things he comes out with because he's consistent. He's unafraid to be different. He inspires, even if mugs don't want to admit that he inspires them. He inspires them. It's like when Prince was out and dudes were like, nah, I don't like Prince, but quietly in their room when nobody was around, they were singing Darling Nikki by themselves, you know? So I think, you know, the Saint Kendrick is just, he's always pushing the boundary. He's super, super, like, just...
Inspired by Prince, too.
Yeah, and he shows it all, he exhibits it all, he gives me hope. I love that kid.
Nice. Well, can we get the house lights up, please, Oscar? And we want to give some folks a chance to ask some questions of the panel. And Yashira will come around with the microphone, the wireless microphone, and allow folks to ask. Now, I know you all enjoyed it. We felt the love and the laughter. So I know some people have questions. And if you have questions, if you can make your way to the stairs, it'll make it easier.
Let me say good evening to everyone, and what a wonderful
Hey,
get-together. Yes, indeed. Happy birthday to me. I want to, when we talked about censorship, and I'm like you, my brother, I don't think that there's anything that folks shouldn't be able to say. But there's this one record, and they played this record almost every 5-10 minutes, and I think that's the record that killed Dolores Tucker. The record was, it's all right to speak?
Speak freely.
Okay, it was Fuck Your Mother, Kill Your Father, Put Your Sister on the Block. And they played that record over and over and over again. And I couldn't understand how in the world that they could even put a record like that on air, but they did. And I believe that's the record that killed Dolores Tucker.
Do you remember who the artist was? Because we're all trying to strain to remember who that was.
I'm telling you, I don't know who it was, but they played that record over and over and over again. Oh, I did.
Tupac. I don't remember that one.
But you're saying they played it on the radio?
Yes, they did. Yes, they did.
I remember
And
this song
I'm
anyway.
telling you, that's, I believe, the record that killed Dolores Tucker.
I was gonna say, and I own Tupac. I don't. Maybe that's one of the ones that I.
I mean, he
skipped
certainly
past.
has some choice words for C. Dolores Tucker
Yeah.
on record. I just don't remember those specifically. And you know, rest in power, C. Dolores Tucker. That to me is not an argument that's pro censorship, only because, again, like, I would love for people to focus on educating what young people are consuming, like educating people about what they're consuming, right? Because censorship just never works. It has never worked as policy. Like I talk about that lag, but Dr. Hadley is also right that in the world that we live in right now, it just doesn't make sense. You know, your kids have intuitive capabilities and in terms of like technology and access to text in ways that we never did. We could spend all day, every day trying to get things censored. And to me, that's wasted energy. I'd rather talk to young people so that they can make the same judgment you made about that song and not wanting to hear that song and being able to turn off that song and maybe calling the radio station and say, yo, that song is terrible, it's awful. Like, I want to empower people to have those tools, right? And of course, options are important in this as well, right? But if we give them the right tools, they're going to be discerning and they're going to make better choices. They'll make smarter choices. So I just feel like in dealing with young people, you know, I deal with young people in college all the time, but I also do a lot of volunteer stuff around high schools. They just don't have the tools right now to parse all the stuff that's coming at them. And I just feel like talking about censoring artists is like, not only is it anti-free speech, but it's just irrelevant to what the real challenges are right now, which is we got to give these young people some skills to make the same decision that you made about that song.
And Brother Tyrone, I would just want to piggyback on that quickly. One of the ways that I found that young people will make the decision to cut it off is understanding how mesmerized they are by the beat. So when I was teaching at Project Home in the teen after school program, one of the things I challenged my students to do was to bring in the lyrics of the songs that they claimed that they love, and we'd read it like poetry. And sometimes the funkiness of the beat will completely make a child miss what they're getting subliminally through the lyrics of that song. And my students were bringing these lyrics, and half of them didn't even know half of what they were listening to before they actually saw it written down. And they would try and read it, and they would go, Miss Stephanie, this doesn't make any sense. Mm-hmm. Thank you. Mm-hmm. So I just want you to understand, you know, that there are ways that without necessarily banning it, you can help young people come to the same conclusion that you might want them to come to about the music. And part of it is understanding where their fascination with the music is, and that, you know, those African drums, they get us, versus the actual message of the songs that they're listening to. Because I contend that anybody who really tries to read Lil Yachty will probably make a different kind of call on his music. Older folks, look him up.
Yeah. Well, they did, man.
Yep, absolutely. Historical context, thank you. Next question.
Jumbo family, good evening, everyone.
Hey, Brother Donald.
My question, I have a statement and a question. My favorite group is WURD.
All right.
My favorite song is Smile Happy. It had no lyrics, but it had feeling.
Yeah.
Because when we're talking about music, we're not just talking about artists reciting stuff over the microphone. We're talking about artists playing the drums, the guitar, and flutes, and everything else. So when you talk about music, stop putting it in a singular element for me, please, because music is universal. It doesn't matter the language. It matters the content and how you feel about it. Secondly, I'm pissed because I don't hear no more tambourines. Ohio Players,
yes,
the Funk Box, they made music off of things that we use and utilize as slaves, because I'm pissed at a dude named Snoop Doggy Dogg who doesn't like referencing his history to slavery. And he can't see the achievements from slavery that was made, and especially when I'm sitting here looking in this room.
Mm-hmm.
Because slavery was not a detriment. It made us better. It made us better. My question is,
How much time do we have left on this program? 'Cause hold on, brother. I want to try to answer that. Can I answer that one piece right there? I don't think that we have to edify an institution of systematic rape, oppression, and violence, and the extraction of our people in order to valorize the fact that we endured that we survived that we wrestled with that in a way that no other people in the history of the world have been able to wrestle with that kind of systematic oppression. So I don't know if slavery was good for us. That sounds a little bit Booker T. Washingtonian to me, but we can acknowledge the fact that our ancestors are survivors and that they have enduring and endearing spirits without necessarily saying that slavery was good.
no. I did not mean, no. I don't mean slavery was good for us. I mean it was good for us to come out of it.
Okay, so we're saying the same thing. Yeah.
We got you.
To come out of it.
Okay. I got you.
Still coming out of it.
I got you,
Yes.
bro.
Understand?
I got
So
you.
it was good that we understood the oppression.
Yes.
And so now, when I have my grandsons and granddaughters with me, what music can I play for them that will not offend me and them? It will educate us both.
Well, I want to go back to something else you said from a specific kind of composition piece, because I think it is important that what we have seen in the commercialization of the music industry is a move away from the expense of having live instrumentation and some of the things that really endeared us to this music because you said that not being able to parse through the music is partially because our children don't have music appreciation. Mm-hmm. They barely have any kind of creative programs in school for us to deal with that. So, also, from a musicology standpoint, taking away the tambourine is a pretty big deal when it comes to that way we
artists
process.
were using the tambourine though too, yo. You know what I mean? Like listen to Isaiah Rashad, he uses the tambourine in his music. And for your grandkids, please listen to Arson. If you want music that doesn't offend, right? Or if you're offended by profanity, there are artists who make music without profanity.
Even Swiss Beats got a song called Tambourine where they use nothing but tambourines.
Nothing but tambourines.
Yeah.
And
What's the
again,
Isaiah Rashad song? I think it's called Testify.
And again, a plug for these young jazz. I go back to Christian Scott, who a lot of people like the drums of trap music, and he's drawing on his background, being from New Orleans, and these contemporary sounds, and his lineage as a straight-ahead jazz musician, and packaging all that together to address what's happening in the world today. And that's music that is made at a really, really high level. These are all brilliant musicians on these records, singers on these records. The musicians that rappers hire to play on their records. Because that Kendrick record, To Pimp a Butterfly, is really a jazz record.
It
It's got
is.
all the top young players on it. And so this music is out there. Sometimes because of the commercialization of the industry, it does require us to do a little bit of homework and look in sources that don't come from the dominant music industry.
Yeah.
To find out what they are, but it is actually there in a pretty healthy amount.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. We only have time for a few more questions, but we absolutely want to get to some of the rest of you standing in line.
So since we're in the Clef Club, I have a jazz question, and I'm wondering, it's kind of historical. There's a historical guy named Harry Anslinger, who actually was...
Wait, I'm sorry, hold on one second. Folks in the back, I know you mean well, but sound really carries in this room. So we just ask for you to keep it down so we can hear the folks asking questions. Thank you.
So he's with the Department of Justice and the Department of Narcotics, and they had a division that was designed to address, number one, marijuana and drugs, and its association with the jazz culture in the 1920s and 30s, because they thought it was the means by which the black community and other communities were becoming resistors. Mm-hmm. That they felt like the music actually was the thing, coupled with marijuana or heroin or whatever, that had to be addressed. So just like J. Edgar Hoover brought down Marcus Garvey, this guy Harry Anslinger is credited with really destroying Billie Holiday and other jazz musicians. I'm just wondering if we could talk about historically the fact that this government takes our music so seriously that they actually have government efforts designed to resist the resistance in black music.
Thank you, Brother Shamari.
Yeah, listen, I would just want to separate these two a little bit in the sense that, I wrote a book about the prison industrial complex, and in that book I talk about the history of U.S. policy as it relates to drug policy and how drug policy is always racialized. It's always has been racialized. The propaganda around it always has been racialized. So that's just 1 + 1 = 2. There's lots of great, not my book, other books written about this stuff to think about. I'm not as familiar with U.S. government's attempts to sabotage jazz musicians, but there is a rich trove of information about how this government has targeted and in many ways tried to undermine and sabotage rap artists. If you just Google New York Police Department and Miami Police Department and rap sheets, you will see they had specific task force to surveil and follow rap artists even when they came into town.
It's called the hip hop cops, right?
The hip hop cops.
They call it the hip hop cops.
If you go back to the movie that Steph was mentioning earlier, they talk about the fact that the FBI wrote a cease and desist letter to NWA. It doesn't talk as much about the fact that the FBI surveilled NWA. And so the U.S. government has taken an oppositional stance to black music historically. And I'm not a historian, but I can speak to hip hop culture that is still the same.
Yeah, black music is always criminalized before it's co-opted. And so, even with jazz, which to a lot of people represents the height of respectability now, there were ads and not ads, but stories in newspapers that, told people, told white people, don't let your kids listen to jazz. Next thing you know, they're gonna bring home a biracial baby, right? This in very serious rhetoric, and that mirrors what happened with R&B before it became Alan Freed, quote unquote, named it rock and roll, right? And the same thing happens in hip hop. And so the way law enforcement works, if we really accept the premise, and I think that we should, that the whole system is built on white supremacy, and that infects every aspect of it, then it makes sense that our law enforcement agencies, which don't even give a damn about black life, certainly don't give a damn about black music, especially when they see it actually working to be a change agent, a force for good, in whatever moment in history in which that happens.
Our next question.
Good evening. My question has to deal with...
Please speak into the microphone. We can't hear you if you don't.
I see most people in my generation here, people who are in their 40s, their 50s, and their 60s. I don't see a lot of young people here. And the young people are the ones that are, terrorizing our neighborhoods. And what are we doing to reach them, so that we can inspire them to make music that uplifts instead of, just bebop music, for lack of a better term, bebop music.
I could speak on that.
Arson is sitting right here.
Yeah, I was gonna say Arson.
Listen, I just...
Tell them who you are, son. Tell them who you are.
Listen, when we talk about taking a responsibility to do research and we want our youth to do research, it's both ways.
Yes.
You want older people to do the same research. Because I'm gonna let it be known right now, this weekend is 2 big hip hop events coming up, and they're both positive events. Saturday, I am actually managing a fashion show where 300 youth is coming, and they're talking about the decades of hip hop fashion, and they're performing positive songs. These are 13-year-olds to 24-year-olds. And then Sunday, Children's Hospital, Philadelphia Fight, Access Matters, Einstein Hospital, they sponsor a concert. The concert every year is called Hip Hop for Philly, where they have local artists and they have 1,200 youth come out. In 2014, you can Google Hip Hop for Philly. You'll see me, Wale, and Chill Moody. We had 1,200 youth get HIV tests, tested, condoms, and it was a lot of educational information provided, and it was a free concert. They came out on their own. It's actually 5 pop-up events leading up to that concert where 100 youth on average come to that event just because they want information and they want to hear about what's going on in music, and some of those young artists make positive music. Y'all can also, this is a lot of information, but you can also Google New Wave. It's actually young teenagers, 13 to 15. They do concerts at the William Way Center downtown, where their whole agenda is positivity. I actually went to some of the concerts and performed at one and was just amazed. They don't like negativity. Their whole movement is positive. So it is young people out here making positive music, and they're taking the initiative without nobody telling them to do it. So it goes both ways. Sometimes you got to search for what's not out there because it's not promoted, as just as well as you want the youth to search and know their history about classical music.
And I'm going to piggyback on that with something we've talked about often on the Mojo, which is those of you who still have stereos, turn your speakers to your window and play your music as loud as the music in the cars that drive up and down your block. But play the stuff that you want our youth to know. Because they'll appreciate the sounds, they just probably don't get it. And they certainly don't get it in that kind of way where they feel welcome to partake in it with you, of a different generation, of a different background from them. Turn your speakers on this summer and invite youth onto your porch, onto your stoop, on your block to engage in the music with you, please.
I want to say one thing. Hip hop music is that same music. It's sample. It's James Brown. It's Marvin Gaye. They sampled those records. They turned the turntables into an actual instrument. They used that instrument. It's actually called turntablism. It's actually in a Webster. It's actually an instrument now. So, don't push me because I'm close to the edge. Puffy and Mace did that song. Mm-hmm. So a lot of these songs have those samples, and they appreciate sonically the same music. It's just our job to connect the dots, to educate them like, hey, that song you like, that sample, that comes from this, play it. And they're like, wow, really? And they can appreciate it more because they can see the gap.
We have time for one more question. For those of you who can hang out, please hang out and ask our panelists and ask your fellow friends here tonight those questions as we mix and mingle as a part of our closing reception. Yes.
Last one.
Good evening, everyone. My name is Demetrius, and just to answer the brother's question, it's in one of the lines of Marvin Gaye that was played this evening, is talk to me so you can see what's going on. And I work with young people every day, and I think it's important to have an exchange, because what we do is, adults, is we kind of talk over them. Mm-hmm. And if you have an exchange, okay, let me listen to what you're listening to, and let me allow you to listen what I'll listen to. And a lot of times you will enlighten them. And the comment and question that I have is, I grew up in the MTV era, and I remember heavy metal, rock music where it has skulls and death and sex and drugs. And I've seen the transition of hip hop being party and fun to drugs and death. And can you comment on that transition and how we could, have our young people look at how that transition was engineered and how we can kind of bring them back to who we really are as a people?
There was a certain amount of corporate engineering that directly impacted hip hop, particularly around the shift from Public Enemy selling like the #1 record. I think it was It Takes a Nation of Millions to Hold Us Back in like '87, to those first couple of NWA records that you get in the late '80s and early '90s, and certainly the music industry decided that they could sell a lot more records, but also could create this formula for record sales through gangster rap that they couldn't through more politicized rap. And so I think that's just a piece of the history. I think there are other interventions that the market forces make in terms of the content that we're able to consume. But and I know I'm gonna sound like a broken record, but I just have seen so many artists create the kind of music that people want artists to create, and not enough people supporting those artists. You know what I'm saying? Like like a lot of times when I'm speaking, people say, well, where's the women in hip hop? There's women all over hip hop. Are you buying their records? You guys know who Rhapsody is? You know what I'm saying? Like, I mean, I'm frustrated with this argument because yes, we can make a sophisticated critique of like market forces and white supremacy and how it shapes what we have access to in terms of mainstream music, but are we committed to being proactive, progressive, smart, and discerning about choosing the music that we listen to, choosing the music that our children listen to, or challenging? You say you work with young people. I hope that when you're teaching and working with young people that you're giving them tools to seek further knowledge on their own, to go out and find the music that's more substantive, and to be able to tell the difference between music that's not substantive and music that is. And I think in the world that we live in, where there's just so much data everywhere, if we're not doing that, if we're not educating people to make smart choices about what they consume and what they listen to, then the debates about like what market forces are doing or what white supremacy is doing, let's have them and let's talk about that and make sure we name that and claim that. But that's just one step of it. Yep. There's other parts of that process where there's work that has to be done, and we have to actually support the artists that are making substantive and incredible music if we want to hear those artists on larger platforms.
Right. I just want to add to what you're saying. Music industry is not interested in the wellness of our community and the wellness of our children. So I think it is an aim to look to them to be interested in those things. Sometimes it is coincidental when they find somebody like a Kendrick Lamar who is talented and a part of, the commercial music industry and is also able to say something that is nutritional to our community. That's rare. That's the exception, not the rule. But at the same time, I feel like I would like to challenge us to flip this assumption that we have that the music that we seek is not there, because it is. To your point, Dr. Peason, assume that the kind of music that you want your grandkids to listen to is there. Don't assume that it's not there. And so then the question becomes, how do I connect with that music? Everybody knows what Google is. And I'm not saying this to be condescending at all. But the great thing about Google is that you don't have to know a whole lot about what you're looking for in order for Google to find it. What I mean is, if you wanted to type into Google top women positive rappers, I guarantee you it's going to give you a whole page of lists from Complex, lists from all of these different sources where people have ranked and provided examples of the kind of art that we say we want to have our more in our musical diet. So it's as simple as that, like using the tools that we have to literally give us the information and give us the music that we want to see more of in our community. And then, as you said, take it a step further and actually supporting them. So if Rhapsody is in town, buy your grandkids tickets to go see her. Go with them, right? She is a powerful young woman MC who's doing it at an exceptionally high level. Yep. Bridge that gap. Like, this is gonna take some work on our part, but the truth is, it always did. The technology just makes it feel a little different.
Well, I just want to say yes to everything. And thank you for the question. It's definitely a loaded question. It's probably a whole panel that we can do based on that question. It's definitely a problem going on with what is being perpetuated in much, not all, right? Like we're all talking, there's all kinds of options. But much of what many of our young people are listening to is riddled with, really rape references, severe drug use, severe violence, and severe quest for the almighty dollar, which will seemingly, from when you listen to it, they will do just about anything to get it. But it's not really, it's like us communicating constantly, not to cause so much, which is difficult, because when you refer to the young people as the people that are terrorizing your community, which may be true, but we're all part of that community, and we all have to continue to somehow create and seek out opportunities to continue conversation and communication and to give each other options, because there are a lot of things we don't know about their struggle, about what they're experiencing, about their pain. Trust me, a lot of what they're expressing is because they're in pain and they don't know how to really tell us that they're in pain and this is the way they do it, and it may not seem healthy and it may not feel healthy, and we need to come in there somehow and tell them, okay, well, let me give you this other option for how to get healthy and heal your trauma and your pain, you know, which is what I do a lot as an artist. I thankfully get to work with a lot of young people, but I do see it as a serious problem, because if it continues to be proliferated, these are the young people that are going to be all of the adults that we're all dealing with in about 5 minutes. And we do need to come up with some solutions. There are solutions, but they're not always going to be easy. So are you ready ready to do the work is the question.
Hey, I just wanted to mention one last thing. I just want people to be mindful of what artists go through. You got to remember that these songs are created in moments in their lives. And they may be in a moment where they're going through a drug addiction, so they want to talk about how they get high. You know, Ritz has a song called Blow where he talks about sniffing coke the whole time. But then 3 years later, he talks about when he went to rehab. Then 3 years later for that, he talks about how he has a drug treatment program. Jay-Z had a song called Big Pimpin'. Now he's featured on a song called I Do, and talks about what it's like to be married and have a child. So you got to understand that artists are just humans, and they go through the same stages in life and struggles that everybody else goes through. We need not take everything so serious, take it with a grain of salt. We understand that people have power, but I want to talk about resistance and power to end this off. Nowadays, we give the industry too much credit. They're really weak. Think about it. Because of the internet, they lost a lot of money. So they're kind of desperate. They have this microwave concept where it's like whatever's hot on the streets, we're going to pick it up, make as much money as we can, and drop it. You won't even hear most of these artists in the next 3 years. They're lucky to find people like J. Cole, Kendrick Lamar. That's good. They don't care about the content at all. We give them too much power to even think they do. They care about the money. So that's where we come in as consumers and artists. As artists, we have platforms like YouTube, iTunes. You can go on your phone right now and find everything about me musically. And you have the power to purchase it, listen to it, go to the concert. When you do that, if 5,000 of y'all do that and the radio and these labels get wind of that, they're coming running because me and you have the power. You're the consumer. I'm the one producing it. We're the supply and demand. So we can mold our own agenda by supporting each other, by communicating and understand that. And they follow. The industry follows wherever the money is. They are not, it's kind of like an unconscious entity. It follows where the money is. So we have to support what we say we want to support, and we have to support those artists that we want to hear, because that's what's going to drive the agenda.
Just one really quick thing, because unfortunately, and listen, I love music, I've made a career out of it, but we scapegoat it too much. To Arson's point, I mean, if we want to change our neighborhoods, we could get rid of every negative rapper, every drug rapper, every rape rapper. We still gonna have problems with domestic abuse and sexual assault in our communities. Get rid of every ignorant mumble mouth rapper. We still have to reform our educational system. Get rid of everybody who's talking about drugs. We still gonna have drugs in our community. So we can't scapegoat the music and be like, oh, these guys are making bad songs. It's making the kids behave bad. Look at the environment that we're in and the structures and the governments and the powers and forces that contribute. We can't scapegoat the music for the structural issues of poverty and drug abuse and sexual assault and rape that exists in our communities.
Yeah. We have to wrap this up, ladies and gentlemen. But I feel your energy. What you're giving us shows us that this conversation was very necessary. Please join me in thanking our panel for their conversation with us tonight. And I want to encourage you, as Arson was just doing, a form of resistance that you have is through your support and your dollars. Find the positive artists that you want to have proliferated in our society and buy their music, see their shows. And now, tonight, please make a friend here in the crowd and enjoy the reception.
I just want to announce the winner of the tickets for Frankie Beverly and Maze. We've got Sandra Fields. Sandra Fields, you won 2 tickets. Are you here, Sandra? All right. Well, a big thank you to the panel. Let's thank the panel and Steph Renee. Excellent work. We have a great reception. There's some food back there. There's a cash bar.